There are places so quiet you stop hearing the world, and start hearing yourself. That was the first thing Elias noticed when the road opened toward the village. Not the broken roofs. Not the empty windows. Not even the way the hills seemed to lean back from it, as if they wanted no part of what waited below. It was the silence. The village sat in a hollow of dead grass and cracked stone, forgotten by maps and almost forgotten by time. Its street was little more than a seam of old pavement, split by weeds and weather. Houses stood half-collapsed along it, their doors hanging crooked, their windows dark and hollow like eyes that had long since given up on blinking. Nothing moved. No smoke. No dogs. No voices. Even the wind seemed reluctant to cross the threshold. Elias had come looking for an old footpath rumored to lead through the valley and shave hours from his journey. He had passed through plenty of abandoned places before. Ruined farmsteads. Empty mills. Towns left behind when the roads changed and the people followed. But this was different. This place did not feel emptied. It felt paused. As if life had been interrupted in the middle of an ordinary day and never started again. At the village edge, he found a rusted bicycle leaning against a wall, still upright as if its owner might return any minute. A child's shoe lay in the dirt nearby. Not buried. Not weathered away. Just lying there, as though it had been dropped in a hurry. Elias stared at it too long, and the longer he looked, the more it seemed like he was the one trespassing in something private. He should have turned back then. Instead, he walked in. The first house he tried had a door swollen in its frame. Inside, dust coated a table set for no one. A bowl sat in the center, cracked clean through. On the far wall, someone had scratched 3 lines into the plaster, then a 4th halfway through before stopping. Elias brushed his fingers over the marks and felt a sudden chill crawl up his arm, sharp enough to make him pull away. Outside, he heard a sound. A knock. Just one. He looked toward the lane, but no one was there. He told himself it was a loose shutter shifting in the wind. Yet there had been no wind a moment ago, and when he stepped back into the street, the silence felt tighter than before, almost watchful. At the center of the village stood a small shop with shelves stripped bare and a bell above the door that no longer rang. Elias found a handwritten note nailed to the frame in fading ink. Go before nightfall. That was all. No explanation. No signature. Only a warning, as plain as a grave marker. He wasn't alone for long after that. Near the old well, he saw the first villager. Or what passed for one. The woman was thin enough to look carved from shadow, her face pale beneath a dark scarf. She carried a basket with both hands, though it seemed too light to require effort. You should leave, she said. Why? Her gaze drifted past him, toward the houses. Because the village is awake. Elias almost laughed, but the sound died before it escaped. Awake? The place looked dead. The woman took a step back. Don't stay for dusk. Don't answer if you hear your name. And if you see a light in a window where no one lives, do not follow it. Then she walked away so quickly it was as if the ground itself had called her home. By noon, Elias had met 3 more locals, each stranger than the last. A man mending a fence with shaking hands. An old boy in a cap, no older than 17, who refused to meet his eyes. A grandmother sitting on her stoop with a shawl around her shoulders despite the warmth. None of them would tell the same story twice. One said the village had been cursed by violence long ago, and the soil still remembered. Another muttered about a fire beneath the earth that never fully died. The grandmother only said, people think haunted places are empty. That is how the village gets them. Elias asked what she meant, but she had already turned her face away. As afternoon faded, the light changed. It thinned. The sun sank behind the ridge and left the village in a colorless wash, gray and sickly, like the world had been rinsed clean of warmth. Shadows stretched longer than they should have. Doorways turned deeper. Every empty house looked occupied by something patient. Elias kept walking because turning back would mean admitting he was afraid. But fear had already arrived. It came first as sound. Not much. A faint tapping in the walls. A soft scrape from beneath the floorboards. Then another knock from somewhere behind him, close enough to make him spin around, and still there was no one in the lane. Then came the whispering. He could not make out the words, only the shape of them, as if voices were trying to speak through water. They came from the alleys, from the attic vents, from the well, from places that should have held only dust and birds and rot. He told himself it was his own mind filling in the gaps. A person can do that when the world gets too quiet. In a room with no echo, even your breathing starts to sound foreign, like something else is inside you. Elias had heard once about chambers built to swallow every reflection of sound, where people grew uneasy because their own bodies became unbearable. Heartbeat. Breath. Pulse. In places like that, silence is never empty for long. It breeds things. Night did not fall all at once. It seeped in. The last of the light vanished behind the rooftops, and with it went the village's fragile disguise. The air turned colder, carrying a damp, metallic smell from the ground. Elias felt pressure in his chest, then in his ears, as if the earth itself had begun humming below him. Not loud. Worse than loud. A low vibration that seemed to settle in his teeth. He remembered the warnings then. Leave before nightfall. Do not answer your name. Do not follow the light. He was halfway to the road when he heard footsteps behind him. Slow. Measured. One set. Then two. He turned, and the lane was empty. Still, the footsteps continued, pacing him from just out of sight, slipping from one shadow to the next. A shape moved at the edge of the street, too tall to be human, too low to be a person standing upright. For one terrible second, Elias thought he saw a dark animal crouched beside the ruins, a black dog with eyes like wet coal. Then it was gone. Only the feeling remained. That he was being escorted. Watched. Led. The first light appeared in the village square, glowing in the upper window of a house Elias knew had been empty. It was faint and steady, the color of candle flames seen through skin. No. He backed away. From inside the house came a knock. 3 times. Clear. Deliberate. Final. Elias froze, every warning in the village suddenly sharpening into one impossible truth. This was not superstition. It was etiquette. The front door of the house creaked open on its own. Something moved behind the window. Not a face. Not a body. Only an absence where a shape should have been. Elias ran. He ran past the well, past the shop, past the house with the cracked bowl and the child's shoe and the scratched lines in the wall. Behind him, doors began to open one by one. Not wide. Just enough. As if the village itself were turning its head to watch him flee. The hum beneath the earth grew stronger. He felt it in the soles of his feet, in the bones of his legs. The road seemed to lengthen as he crossed it, the exit stretching farther with every frantic step. Once, he glanced over his shoulder and saw lights in the windows that had been dark all day. Not bright. Not welcoming. Just waiting. At the last bend, he heard his name. Softly. Right beside his ear. He did not stop. He did not answer. He burst through the village boundary just as the night swallowed the lane behind him, and then he was on the open road, gasping beneath a sky that felt too wide to be real. He kept walking until dawn. But the village did not end there. It followed him in the quiet between his steps, in the pauses of his breathing, in the dark glass of every window he passed. 3 times that night, when he stopped at a roadside inn and lay awake in a borrowed bed, he heard a knock at the door. 3 knocks. Always 3. He never opened it. And even now, years later, when the world goes silent around him, Elias still hears that low hum in his teeth, as if some buried thing in that forgotten village learned his shape and never forgot it. Some places are abandoned. Some are preserved. And some are left standing so the suffering will not be lost. If you've ever heard a warning like that, share it in the comments.